Peace to the saints. Today I'm broadcasting live from Nairobi, Kenya. It's been a true pleasure to be here. As always, I like to take out time to show love to those who show love to me, fellowship with the saints. Today we have some game time, which is to say we're chopping it up on those topics related to women and self-improvement. There are a couple stories I want to give you that'll help you out in terms of how you see yourself, how you move through life, and of course, how you are able to capitalize on these females that are available to you. Firstly, I do want to acknowledge Rain Caprio, who sent through tuition via Cash App. He writes, looking forward to becoming an emperor. I look forward to that as well. For the members who are emperors, I actually get to talk to them and get to know those members. Now, also, Jose came through via PayPal. He writes, Marquette, are most women essentially the same regarding female nature? The short answer is yes. What we have to understand is that there are levels to everything, which is to say that all women have sex drive. Some women have very high sex drive. Some women might have low sex drive. And then obviously there's the average. So is the nature of the female the same? Yes. Let me give you an example that's meaningful to your life. Women wanting to be liked by the community, wanting to please everyone. This is generally the nature of the female. So you can always expect to observe this quality in a woman. However, when you find a woman who has a higher level of this drive to be liked by everyone and to want everyone to be happy and think well of her, this woman is particularly dangerous to you as a man, for she won't be loyal to you in particular. She'll be loyal to the group or the community that you're a part of, and she will prioritize everyone being happy and pleased as opposed to you as an individual being happy and pleased as a priority. So that's something that you should know is unique to the female nature, whereas men are more self-focused, selfish, self-interested. So we're able to be what's called disagreeable, which is to say that if something is good for us, sometimes we don't care how it affects other individuals. Whereas women are always thinking about, yes, how something affects them, but also how it affects others. The more you can find a woman who prioritizes you over the community and cares more about what you feel, what you think over what others think and feel, then you're going to have a long, strong relationship, because the woman who cares about what other people think and feel, well, she's not going to follow your rules. She's going to follow the rules of the culture. The woman who cares about what other people think and feel, she's not going to wear what you would prefer her to wear. She's going to wear what the culture thinks is sexy or attractive. So yes, generally female nature is the same, just as male nature is the same, but there are levels to certain characteristics that typify the female. Thank you for that meaningful question, Saint. Shout out to Zanaria, comes through tuition via Cash App. The Saint is very consistent. It's always good to see the saints that I recognize. You dig? I also would like to acknowledge Markel, who is a member at marquettism.com. Certainly, the members mean everything, and they're a part of this real community. You dig? There are a lot of onlookers, but peace to the saints, the real saints who are members and really hold this thing together. I also want to address a couple topics for you. Number one, I want you to understand that in life, whether you're speaking of women or you're speaking of your financial pursuits, and of course, you should always have a goal in the areas of relationships, whether they're romantic, familial, professional. And then you should have a goal in the area of your finances, right? How do I make myself wealthy or make myself comfortable? With regards to these two things, you have to know that the joy must be in the pursuit, not the outcome, which is to say, while you're pursuing your goal, you should be enjoying that process, not only enjoying the outcome, because guess what? Once you achieve an outcome, all you're going to do is set another goal. Consider this. If you guys actually want to become a doctor, would it make sense that you're going to try to become a doctor, yet you hate every moment of medical school? Well, that wouldn't make sense, because if you don't like medical school, surely you're not going to like being a doctor. So you must enjoy the process as much as the outcome. You dig? Shout out to Jason Paul, one of the emperors. He writes, peace to the saints, like the hoodie. I truly appreciate that. I got the link in the description for those of you who need this one. The swarthy wizard comes through. Baller alert. He writes, Peace to the saints. I have a question. What is the reason males and females, 304s in particular, quickly caught up in this love thing before getting actual time to get to know one another? Well, this is a biological thing. You see, the human being is different from the lower animal in that we're civilized, which is to say that our minds are able to lift us from behaving based solely on our biology, behaving solely based on our sexual desire. Those who are middle class or better tend to be more civilized. They tend to be able to let the mind rule the body, whereas those who are more lower class tend to let the body and the emotions rule the mind, you see. And as a result of their body making decisions, they end up having children outside of marriage. They end up having all of these baby daddies and things like that. And the physical, which is, the sexual gratification, this leads people to engaging physically before they've engaged mentally, meaning that you've laid with a woman, had intercourse with her before getting to know her, and you confuse that physical situation with actual love. Here's what I mean. In the human being, in our biology, when you actually have intercourse with someone, especially in the female, it pumps out high levels of oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical. It is a chemical in the brain that makes you feel connected to someone. And because you've laid down and slept with this human being, you feel more connected to them. Now, this is not the case in women who are very promiscuous or women who are working in the sex industry. It's a lot less strong because they've been conditioned out of this through trauma or through experience. But in a healthy human female, oxytocin is released, which makes you feel bonded, and it confuses you into this idea of love. Does love actually exist? Who knows? I tend to believe more so in compatibility. I believe in loyalty, but love is this magical thing that usually comes from the physical interaction and the oxytocin chemical being released in the brain as a result of sleeping with someone. So what happens is, now that you've slept with the person, you feel connected to them even though you don't know them. And now that you're dealing with someone that you don't know, now you're about to find out about all the baggage and all the things that you have trouble dealing with on the back end, which is really the wrong way to do it. What I can assure you of, gentlemen, is that if you would actually take the time to Dr. Phil the woman in the front end, you get to understand her history, her true nature. Then you know if you actually like her. Then you know that after you actually bust that nut, if you're going to want to deal with her, you have a better sense of the lay of the land, so to speak, as far as this relationship goes. So I highly recommend that you do things in order, especially if you're getting involved with a woman you find to be appealing and you might want to hold on to her. Now, if it's a one hitter quitter, then, of course, you don't plan on getting to know her on the back end either. So yeah, you smash her, you smash and dash. But generally, I don't recommend that. Thank you for that meaningful question and for the significant contribution, Saint. Dell, since through tuition, truly appreciate it. Peace to the saints who, show up and show love. It means a lot. As I was saying, you have to enjoy the hunt or the pursuit of a goal just as much as the outcome of a goal. When you condition your mind to enjoy the process as much as the outcome, then your life is a joy. What happens when you're not enjoying the process as much as the outcome, then your life is drudgery. You're not happy on a daily basis. So, for example, if you set a goal to become a millionaire, while you're working to become a millionaire, making the necessary connections, doing the necessary tasks, if you're not enjoying that, then your life is not a good life, because it might take 10 years to become a millionaire. So are you telling me that you're going to be unhappy for 10 whole years until you become a millionaire in the 11th year? Well, that wouldn't make sense. That's not a good life. Further, you have to condition your thinking around two concepts: more and better. This is really the basis of capitalism. In capitalism, there's a spiritual aspect to it, which is to say that when you condition your mindset around more and better, that lets you know it doesn't mean that you're going to be an unhappy person. It doesn't mean that you're dissatisfied. What it does mean is that, even though you have 5 cars, you say, well, maybe I'll get a 6th car. It keeps you going, keeps you alive. You see, because when you stop exercising, then you start aging. When you stop exercising and you stop living, then you start dying. So you should always be thinking more. Now, granted, it's not quite proper or necessary or moral to own 5 cars. But when you're seeking more, it keeps you sharp, it keeps you active. So you should always think more. No matter what you have, you should always want more as a man. And then you should also think better. Well, if I have this exotic car and it has 6 gears, is there a car that has 7 gears? If this exotic car gets up to 200 miles per hour, is there an exotic car that gets up to 250 miles per hour? Or if I have these 3 women and they're serving me well, what would a 4th woman do for my business? What would a 4th woman do for my family name? What would that do for creating more children to expand my lineage? If I have this great woman who's beautiful and intelligent woman, is there a woman who is even better than she is? More and better is a credo that I keep that keeps me actually striving to be more ambitious, because the moment you stand still is the moment you start losing. I got this mentality being in the technology industry because it is the most competitive industry. I was talking to my buddy recently who's a physician, and I was hosting him at my place in Las Vegas, him and his lady. And I was telling him, I say, as a doctor, if I wanted to compete with you, I would have to go to school and spend 10 years getting the requisite education to compete with you and to nibble away from your food and to, take money that you could have. But conversely, when I was in the technology business, if someone wanted to compete with my mobile technology, well, they could start doing that today. They could put a team together and get some engineers working, and they could start competing today. And that's why I was in the most competitive field on earth, ever changing, new technologies, new bugs, new cyber criminals. And for that reason, it conditioned me, one, to work consistently, to work hard, and to enjoy work. I'm just checking my dinner might be arriving. I hope he doesn't mind coming in. Do you have the dinner? Okay. Sorry about that, Saints. So the mentality of more and better, I want you guys to really let that soak into your heart. And especially if you grew up poor, you grew up around people in a scarcity mindset. And one of the challenges with that is they feel like there's never enough, which is actually not true. And also sometimes they feel like when you get something, you have to hold on to it. When really, as a winner, when you get something that you want, you should also be thankful for it, but asking yourself, well, what else is there to achieve? Hey there, come on, bring that in. I'll take it here. Thank you so much. Do I need to sign for this, or was it already signed for?
Not yet signed for.
Okay.
So everything, she told me to bring out the food here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did she only order the steak, or is there also more food?
There's a pen. I don't know if it's for her.
Yes, it's for her. She's going to meet me down here, so you can just bring all the food. Maybe drop hers on this table. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so as I was saying, if you grew up poor and you finally get something, then you want to hold on to it for dear life. And that's actually the wrong mentality for growth. You see, one thing that I learned from some investors that I had in Cincinnati is they told me that they served a God of abundance. And they told me that being abundant is what God wants for you. I thought it was a very fascinating mentality because I was also raised in a Christian household, yet my grandmother and mother and uncles, no one ever spoke of God believing that you should be wealthy. And when they spoke of Jesus, for example, they talked about Jesus stating the following. He spoke to a wealthy man, and he told the wealthy man to give up everything that he owned. If you need me to sign, I can sign.
Yeah.
Okay. He told the wealthy man to give up everything that he owned and to follow him. And Jesus further pointed out, he says, foxes have holes, birds have nests, but me, the Son of God, I have not even a place to lay my head, which is to say that follow me for spiritual purposes, but leave all of your earthly belongings. So I was raised under this idea that God would have you be poor. I was raised under this idea that it's spiritual to be broke. When I really got older and had abundance, I came to understand that all the people who are really helping folks, they have money. You can't really help without money. You can't help at scale. And so I really want to let you guys know that There's nothing spiritual about being broke. There's nothing spiritual about being a beggar. You should seek to have abundance so that you have something to give. You can't give if you ain't got it, right? And you might say, Marquette, why are you harping so much on the spiritual belief side? It's because imagination will define your action. If you can't imagine having something, you're not going to go and try to get it. I assure you of that, right? And also, sometimes your imagination will cause you to self sabotage, thinking you're not worthy of having a certain thing or you're not good enough for it. And so you won't go for it. You dig? And that's why I talk so much about being able to imagine. And if you are fortunate enough to live in the developed world, you get to see all of the things that are out there for you to get. So if you live in Canada, if you live in the United States and Australia, in the developed parts of Africa, like Botswana or certain parts of South Africa, you get to see wealth. So it's easy to know that it's attainable. So for you to complain and feel like you can't acquire what you want, that's your issue. That's no one else's issue. And I also want to make a note on self-identity, and I'm going to get to my lecture. Don't worry. I had mentioned before, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing it down here. Okay. Is this barbecue sauce or is that a peppercorn sauce?
Peppercorn.
Peppercorn. Okay. Thank you very much. So I made a video recently and I said on the video that if you're ugly or you're broke, stay away from me. And there are a few people who made silly comments like, oh, people can't decide on their genetics. When I say ugly, I mean something that's far reaching, meaning that your spirit is ugly, meaning that you don't take care of yourself. I'm not talking about the way you're born looking. I'm talking about how you choose to be. Some people choose to exist in an ugly way. They don't take care of themselves. They don't wash their hands so their nails are dirty. They don't groom themselves. They have an ugly spirit. They don't show love to people in the public. They don't behave in a civilized way. That's ugly. And then there were other people who stated in the comments, they say, oh, I feel personally offended. I'm broke. If you think of yourself as broke, stay away from me. And most of the people who wrote that in my comments, I literally blocked those users. Why? Because I don't want broke people around me. I don't want people who think low of themselves, because you can only give that which you are. So you have to be around people who think well of themselves, not in a narcissistic way, but in a way of self-belief and self-love, above all, self-love. You see, and if you have love on the inside, then you can give love to other people. If you're around someone who's broken or struggling, then they can only really give you what they have, which is poverty and struggle. So I want you guys to understand that even when I had $0, even when I could not afford to feed myself, I still felt abundance. I still felt good about myself. I never felt broke. You see, broke is a mentality. I teach you that wealth is based on your understanding. It's based on who you are. You must be the wealth, and then the wealth will manifest externally, not from thinking, but from appropriate action. And I'm going to go ahead and hit these questions and finish my lecture, because I do have a nice fresh steak that has been brought to me. Hit these questions. It's good to see the same back. Peace to the saints. Christian comes through with tuition. Rotzinger writes, facts. We're supposed to be wealthy and healthy. Oh, true indeed. Shout out to the saint, Brandon. Juan writes, Saint, is it wiser to share or communicate your past traumas if your main chick asks you to talk about it? You're going to let her Dr. Phil you? I don't recommend that. One, you need to figure out why she wants that information. Remember, as the Master Sun Tzu states, prior information enables, which is to say, if you're going to engage someone in warfare, if they have intelligence, meaning information on you, they can use that information against you. Now, consider this. Now, how funny would it be if she says, oh, tell me about your past traumas. And then you tell her that maybe your ex-girlfriend cheated on you. And then maybe you see her and she's wearing a really low-cut dress and she says, "Hey, should I wear this today?" And you say, "I don't know. Like, I can almost see your vagina. That's a very low cut dress. Perhaps you should consider changing your clothes." And then she turns around and says to you, "Well, maybe you're thinking that because your ex girlfriend cheated on you." You see, now she's not even really listening to you. She's not really trying to comprehend what you're saying in the moment. Rather, in her small mind, she's utilizing this past trauma that she thinks you have because you said it. And she's saying that you're interpreting the real world based on that that crippled view that you have because you're damaged. You see, the fact is that when she's trying to do that, she's trying to Dr. Phil you, and she's trying to put herself in the leadership position and the psychologist position. You don't want that. Hey there.
Hey.
Your food is right there. That'll put you on the camera, so let me turn this. Go ahead and grab your food, please. Carrying on. Peace of the Saints, Mr. Cambry came through with the love. Steam Roland is back. That's one of the loyal saints. He writes, "We was thankful for taking out the time for this live." You know what? I really appreciate you acknowledging that because I am on my holiday and it is 2 a.m. here. I do have a lot of plans for tomorrow. Okay, let me acknowledge those who have come through via Cash App. Jason Paul comes through via Cash App. He writes, "Peace, Mr. Burton, motivating me to go extra hard." Oh, absolutely. And you should always go as hard as you can go. And you should be around those who encourage that. You know, I had the privilege of recently, I was a gentleman who lives in my complex, one of the complexes I have a place at. He's a professional boxer, and he says, "Hey, Marquette, you know, I'd love for you to come work out with us." I said, "Fantastic." So I meet up with him and his strength and conditioning coach one morning. This was actually the morning after the fight between Crawford and Porter. So I'd been up late, low on sleep, but I said, let me go get this work. And so I meet up with these guys, and his strength and conditioning coach is there. And I basically just, whatever they're doing, I'm doing. And the workout was so rigorous, I damn near want to say it was inhumane. I've never been that sore the same day that I worked out. Usually you'll be sore the next day. I was sore that day and all the days following. So it was very rigorous. And it was a privilege to be put to the test at that level because most people I work out with, it's a walk in the park, right? They're just not anywhere near my level of conditioning. And so it's good to where you can find somewhere where they put you in some deep water and you're almost drowning. You know, that teaches you how to swim through tough water. RRB writes, paying what I owe. Been watching for years. I truly appreciate that. And I'm happy to have had you for all of these years. And loyalty is everything. Tank sends through 30 piece. The 30 piece. He writes, tuition for always putting in work and giving us quality content on this so-called holiday. Peace of Saints. I didn't even realize it was a holiday because in Kenya it's Friday, but you're right. So absolutely, it is a pleasure. Abdul writes, peace to the saints. How do you feel about therapy? It's a great question. The personalities that go into the therapy profession usually are the personalities who themselves need help. So that's one thing to consider. And the second thing to consider is what kind of person who's mentally healthy and happy wants to deal with people who are unhappy all the time. Like me, I don't even like going into hospitals. I don't want to be around sick people. I'd rather be around happy and healthy people, which are a reflection of myself. So certainly it takes a particular kind of personality to seek out that vocation. And further, you have to be a real genius to be a proper therapist, which is to say that if you must submit yourself to therapy, I would hope that you find someone who is more intelligent than you are, because they're essentially looking into your brain and pushing buttons and moving things around. And you need someone who has the intelligence to be able to adequately do that. I actually did make a video on mental health. So if it's not public, surely you'll be able to find it on marquettism.com. But I do have a video on exactly what I think about therapy and all of that good stuff. Glazer writes, how important has your education been in your road to success and wealth? Self-education is the key. That is what you teach yourself What you learn in school often is not necessarily practical. And honestly, the individuals who are teaching your lessons are not themselves very successful. For what the average, say, high school teacher makes in a year, I spend that in a month. What the average professor makes in a year, I spend that in a month. I'm talking about what I spend, not what I earn. So these people are not very successful. So they really can't teach you about being successful. But education is critical to success and it should be ongoing. And it should be in the major areas of life, which is financial. How do I make money? What is my vocation? If I sell a product, how do I understand that product better than anyone else? How do I understand emerging trends in my industry? If it's about relationships, you should first have to be happy within yourself. So you should make a study of happiness. I even made a exclusive post for the Saints. It is called How to Be Happy on a Consistent Basis. So self-education is absolutely critical. And by the way, peace to the prosperous saints. It's a beautiful thing. Kendrick writes, asked my girlfriend of 4 years to let me see other women, and she said only if she can see other men. I said no. She's a rare find now. I'm suffering because I want a new WAP. I can assure you the woman who says that she wants what you would have is a woman who is not aware and not in touch with the difference between the female and the male. One critical piece of education that you must give your female is that you are a female. And as a condition of being a lady, you have a different nature than I have. You have different desires than I have. And you should have asked her, okay, love, if you'd like to see other men, is that your true interest? You are truly in your heart interested in seeing other men? And if she is, then she's probably a harlot and you probably want to let her go. You see, if a woman is saying that, most of the time she's saying that to stop you from doing what you want. She was saying, okay, well, if you're going to see other women, I want to see other men. She didn't say that out of a sincere interest in seeing other men. She said that out of a sincere hope that she could stop you from seeing other women. Now, it would be feminine on your part to let her reduce you to having what she has. You might turn around on her and say, oh, are we the same? Do I have a restroom with tampons in it? No, I don't. I won't be bleeding this month, but you will. We are different. We require different things, and we will have different things. Now, obviously, you gotta throw a little bit of finesse on that conversation. You dig? And for those of you who don't know how to have that conversation, I recommend you check out Conference 2 footage. I have an exact video where I talk about defining what a man is, defining what a woman is, and defining how a man leads a woman. Undoubtedly, the gentleman that I just spoke to, you need to check out that Conference 2 footage. You can get that at marquettism.com. I highly recommend you check that out and go through those lessons that I lecture on with your lady. The Saint writes, would love your wise words on how to overcome fear and anxiety to approach and overall be yourself, and also how to overcome procrastination and laziness. That's quite an extensive 4-piece question that the Saint just shared there. Number one, I do have a video entitled How to Overcome Fear. The actual title is How to Overcome Fear. I highly recommend you check it out. It's at marquettism.com. You can just click in the search box and type in that title. You also mentioned procrastination and laziness. Well, these are just expressions of performance anxiety, which is the idea that you're not going to deliver the goods or that you lack self-belief. And so all of these things go back to what I said earlier, which is imagination. Can you imagine yourself being successful? Can you imagine yourself being wealthy, realistically? And if not, you must start the conditioning process to get to that level. You must put yourself around the right influences, the right people, and then start taking the steps. Shout out to Daniel. He just purchased the Black Box on ebook. And I'm glad that I just saw that, because that brings me to something that's really going to nourish you guys, especially those who don't believe in themselves, which is most people. Very few people are true winners at heart, but you can all become winners if you choose, if you want that more than anything else. In my book, The Black Box, I start off as a kid who's born into tremendous poverty, financially, mentally, spiritually, father in prison, mother on drugs, grandmother with dementia, and just lots of instability in my early going, very rough, living in a ghetto and suffering all the things in that environment. Throughout life, I describe how you build up the belief that a kid who came from a ghetto can now travel around the world. A kid who came from the ghetto can now experience the finest that the world has to offer: the finest women, the finest clothes, the finest cars, the finest restaurants, the finest treatment. So if you've not read that book and you're struggling with self-belief, you're struggling with getting after it, i.e., struggling against procrastination, you should go to marquettism.com and get the ebook. That's the lowest cost copy that you can get, and read through that. And as you go through each chapter, there's a black box at the end, which is telling you this is the lesson you should gain. And that book was written about my life, but it's written to make you reflect on your life. So as you read that book, you should be asking yourself, well, what did I learn and what should I do? It's a book that drives action. And I'm not saying this to sell books, because making $8 on a book doesn't make me much wealthier. But what it does do is it opens up an infinite supply of knowledge for you, which will surely make you wealthier. I wrote that book over a 10-year period, which is to say I wrote it for you so that it might help you. Shout out to Subadai, one of the long-term members. Had the pleasure of meeting in Las Vegas. I see his membership just renewed. It's an honor to have you continuing to be with Assassin Saint. And this thing of ours is about loyalty. It's about connection, you know. And obviously, I travel all over the world. And when I pull up somewhere, the guys that I want to take out my time to meet, especially on holiday, are the guys that I'm familiar with. You know, I've met you at one of my conferences. I've talked to you one-on-one in a conference, on a consultation, things like this, where there's really something there. You know, like I know it's real. You know, there's thousands of people who watch me, but there's a minority who are loyal and who really mess with the ism, you heard me, and who are really a part of the Assassin. And those are the guys I want to meet. And those are the guys I help facilitate in meeting each other so that they can prosper. You dig? How's your food?
Good.
Good.
How's yours?
Great. Shout out to Isaiah. Speaking of such, one of the saints I had a consultation with, he has a product coming out soon I think you'll enjoy. He writes, sending tuition, enjoy that steak. Oh, I will. Hope they give me a steak knife too. Oh, shout out to Horace. It's good to see you again. He writes, tuition, peace to the saints. Truly appreciate it. Yes, and just a side note before I hop off of this call, the Kenyan people have been so impressive. Tonight, I did 2 deals, both at like 11 p.m., 12 a.m., which lets you know how much hustle these people have. And to me, it's just such a pleasure to be around people who have ambition and who have hustle. The fact that they're working in the middle of the night and they're getting deals done, they're, you know, hopping on the phone to push things through. It's a beautiful thing. I'm very impressed with Kenya so far. Mr. Edgerton writes, I met a homeless man a few years ago whom was comfortable with his living situation. He sold scrap metal for money and had a cell phone. Although he had no money, he had the mind of an engineer, no excuses. There you go, right? I mean, the key is happiness, and however you find that and maintain it is your decision. As I said, men can be disagreeable. You know, that homeless man might disagree with how everyone else thinks life should be, and that's okay, because if he's happy in his situation, let him carry on. Alfonso writes, because I listened, I supported. I appreciate that. Spread the word on that. You did. You know, teach, you know, let men know about being heard and standing up. Second thing I want to remind you of is there's 2 states that your stable can be in. You could have a stable of women that's stable. You know, it's abundant. You got some hardworking women in there, women who are loyal, trustworthy. Or you could have the opposite. Your stable could be empty, or it could be underpopulated, or it could have a lot of fall down bitches. Regardless, you should be doing the same thing, which is constant recruitment and hard work. You see, that is the difference between an average man and a hustler. When an average man acquires a fortune, he starts to rest. When a hustler acquires a fortune, he says, well, there has to be more fortune out there. Let's get after it. And that is what keeps you on top in the long term. It's easy to get on top one time, but to stay there over time shows who you really are. You must keep working. You must enjoy the work. That is the key. And I also want to let you know that when you least expect it, women you thought were solid might not be solid. Women you thought you would die with, you might not die with. They might not be trustworthy. So you have constants, things you think you know, and then you have variables, things you know that you're unsure of. Turns out in real life, some of your constants might actually be variables, even though you don't know. You might have a woman that you think is solid, but she might not be solid at all. She might be betraying you, and you can't be certain of that. And that is why you must have to constantly keep on replenishing the stable just in case, so that you always have something in your back pocket. You dig? That's a lesson from a super pimp. Another thing I want to let you know, don't leave anything on the table. Meaning that, remember I was in Morocco many years ago, and there was two women I encountered, two different opposite mentalities. One woman, I was going to shop for a jalaba, which is like a religious piece, or like is like a cultural garment. And the guy was trying to overcharge me because I'm a foreigner. And the woman was kind of like, okay, we'll pay this price, no problem. He can afford it. I could see that was her mentality. We'll just settle on this price, even though it's high. Even though if I was a Moroccan, like I was her brother, she would not let me pay this price because it would be a high price in consideration of my income. I took note of that. I said, okay, you are spending my money or allowing me to spend my money as though it's not your money. And more importantly, you're not trying to get the best. You're not trying to get the best deal. You're just trying to go on to the next thing. You're careless. I took note of that. Another woman who had taken a taxi somewhere. I think the taxi ended up costing like $3 USD. The man gave me some change and she said, hey, let me see what he gave you. And I show her and she says, oh no, he shorted you. And she tells the man in Arabic, she says, hey, you shorted him. You owe him change. Give him all of his change. So the guy comes back and gives me my change, this taxi driver. And then I asked her, I said, well, how much change did he short me? She said 60 cents. And I said, oh, okay. And in my head, I was thinking 60 cents is not a lot of money, but I appreciate that. You wouldn't let him short me 10 cents. I could tell from her mentality, like if it was 10 cents, she wants every penny of it. And me too. If I'm owed something, I want every penny of it. And if I owe someone something, I am going to present myself to pay, especially if they're a good person. So that was a major lesson in the two types of women and the type of woman you should prefer. Mr. Ratzinger comes back. He writes, much success your way and a huge bag for the new year. And a huge bag for the new year. I appreciate that. True indeed. Let us all prosper. You dig? And let us share it amongst ourselves because, you know, every day should be Saintsgiving. I agree with you, Bryce. And the fact is, the reason that we acquire as great men is so that we have more to share among ourselves. We can enjoy. Mr. Lopez writes, thanks for all the game, Marquette. When going out to business meetings, what are the kinds of things you have to deal with? What are the key things you have to deal with your potential client? Well, the number one thing is make sure that your goals aligned, making sure that when you're going into the meeting, we both know what the outcome should be and that we can collaborate in getting that outcome and that I'm driving that process and that it's time respecting process. You know, we're not taking more time than it should be. I've never had a meeting since I've been a boss that exceeded an hour. It's just not necessary. And if you're finding a roadblock, then you know maybe the right people aren't in the meeting. Maybe this is not the right time. Something's not quite right. You need to reconvene. Another thing I want to tell you is this. Don't ever tell yourself no. I mean this with women, and I mean this with finances. And I'll give you an example of such. There was a time that I'd encountered a woman in a restaurant, good-looking young lady. But I noticed that she was very much so trying not to look at me, which to me was an indicator that she didn't have significant interest, which may or may not be true. You see, there are some women who will try not to look at you because they're interested and they don't want to be embarrassed because they can't help but keep their eyes on you. There are other women who could be interested in you, but it is not their way, it is not their culture to stare at a man. And for that reason, they will not give you any special acknowledgement. But if you were to make an advance on them, they'll acknowledge that they're interested. And so I had a situation where I saw this female at a restaurant and she was trying her best to ignore me. And mind you, when eyes are constantly averted from you, this is actually the same as eyes being constantly on you, because it takes as much energy to make sure that they're acting like they don't see you as it does to stare dead at you. Anyways, I didn't speak to her because there were a lack of what some might foolishly call choosing signals. Now, mind you, choosing signals only exist between a hoe and a pimp. But in this case, there was a lack of interest shown. I was like, whatever. I got more hoes and clothes. I don't need this one. When in reality, regardless of if I got more hoes and clothes, I should still be out getting mohos. You dig? Call me Nemo, Finding Nemo, aka Nemo hoes. So point is this. Even if you're a millionaire, you still should be out making money. Even if your stable is full, you should still be adding to the stable. So the problem there was that I told myself no. You got to make her tell you no. And the same thing is true in business. And if you've read my book, The Black Box, I have an entire story when I explain the merit of making the other person tell you no. Otherwise, in your mind, the answer is always yes. And that story helps you understand how this feeling and ethic evolved in me. And it also tells you the good that has come from it. So I highly recommend you review that story if you are wise enough to have already purchased The Black Box. Mr. Jackson writes, articulate for real. Appreciate it. Mr. Singh writes, how does a P keep his power with his mane when transitioning into the square life? At that point, she doesn't naturally lose her. No, she doesn't, because if you've really been pimping by the book, she's observed how you operate over a long period of time. If she's a real female, you dig, meaning an honest person, she sees that you have displayed merit consistently. She knows who you really are. So when you transition to do something new, it's the same man doing a different activity. The man is the same. So if a woman knows Marquette Devon Burton, whether he's a millionaire or not a millionaire, he's still Marquette Devon Burton, living by the same values and principles. So she shall respect him based on that. Shout out to Kevin. He writes via Cash App, Saints giving. Let's continue to grow, Saints. Oh, true indeed. And you know what? I can't wait. Right now, we're trying to get something set up to where we have a nice little gathering spot in Saint City. And the upcoming conference, which if you didn't get your ticket, they're $5.99 via Cash App or PayPal. And I'm trying to make this smaller so that we can have that feeling of family and intimacy, so that I personally get to shake everyone's hand, because I didn't do that at the last conference. It was just too big, too many people, and that there's familiarity. I want people to have real relationships they can walk away with, people they can do business with. And also I want these interactions to simulate and give example of how you should engage with your loved ones, your brothers, your sisters, your colleagues, things like that.
And they should be buying tickets soon, because there's a very limited number available.
I was just informed that you should be getting your tickets soon, for there are a limited number available. Shout out to Vapor Saint. It comes through via Cash App. That's one of the loyal Saints. He's always pulling up. It's a beautiful thing. Let me see. Oh yes, I also want to give you another short story. Sometimes you exercise too much patience. One of the beautiful things about having abundance is that you're a boss. You get to make the rules. You get to break the rules. That's a beautiful position. I almost like saying that. It's so true, though. I had a female whom, when I categorized her, right? So you can be a one-hitter quitter, you can be a side piece, or you can be a main girl. I'd immediately categorize her into side piece. She seemed like a good side piece because she was ambitious. She was money focused in a good way, and she was intelligent. And I also noticed that she's pretty crafty. She's a good strategist. I also know she's a bit manipulative, which moves her out of being a main girl because she lacks purity in her heart. There's a bit of evil there. Now, there's levels to it, right? It's hard to find a woman without any evil in her. You just have to figure out if it's a level you can deal with. So I categorize her as a side piece. Now, every time I would, hit her up to do something, she would either the St. Wrights wire the tickets $5.99 because that's the price that we've set. I'll put this here. The St. Wright wire the tickets $5.99 because that's the price that we've set. And if you followed our work over time, you would have heard that the last time we had a conference, we lost tens of thousands of dollars. By we, I mean I lost tens of thousands of dollars. And I'd say this person writes whack. Well, it's only whack if you can't afford it, you see. And if you can't afford something, don't get mad at the price. You might consider getting mad at yourself, right? The price is the price, right? Like you don't go into Walmart and say, why is a Snickers $2? You just pay $2. And if you don't have the $2, you can't have the Snickers. You see, this is the kind of mentality that I find to be evil. And I also find that these are the kind of people like I don't want around. Like I'm happy, like, should we increase the price? Yes, we're going to increase the price. So the price was $5.99. As of now, the price is now $649. So I just want everyone to know the price is now $649. I don't want any poverty around me, and I only want hustlers around me. I only want earners around me. The price is now $649 for the conference, and as the conference nears, the price will be going up. And I'm also going to block that user because I don't like poverty, and most importantly, I don't like irresponsibility. If something is out of your price range, don't complain about the price. The price is not the problem. You can't afford it. You're not meant to have everything. I want you guys to understand. For some reason, wow, I tried to block this guy, won't let me block him. Something. Oh, it's an error.
And if they've ever been to a conference, conferences are more money than
Yeah.
we're charging.
Yeah, and as was just shared with me, conferences are far more expensive than we're actually charging, especially for what you get. But I want you guys to understand this. You do not deserve everything in life. You see, when you see me drive by in a Rolls Royce, you might look and like, oh man, like I want that. Well, you can't have it if you haven't earned at that level. Not everyone will drive a Rolls Royce. Some people need to be happy driving a Toyota. You're a Toyota kind of person. There's nothing wrong with that. Because guess what? A car is just a car. It's just four wheels that gets you from point A to point B. Doesn't matter. But there's nothing worse than a male who is so immature, weak, and broke and emotional to where you get mad at not being able to have things you don't deserve. Because if you deserved it, you'd have the money. If you deserved it, you would have the money. Huh? Now, let me let you know. There were times in my life I couldn't afford to go to the conference. I wouldn't have gotten mad. I would just say to myself, okay, I want to make sure that next year I'm in a position to afford to go. And let me also let you know, the men who are going to be at this conference, these are guys who are at a certain level. Meaning I want guys to be among other men who they can do business with. If you don't have $600 to spend, you can't really do business with the guys who are going to be at the conference. You're not going to add value to them. This conference is not about me. It's also about the other people who will be there. You see? So if you don't have $600, you shouldn't be going to the conference trying to get high level knowledge. You still need to get low level knowledge to get your basics together, like being able to save 10% of your income, being able to get a steady job, being able to, hold on to some of your money instead of blowing it all. And yes, I'm chastising you right now, and I'm highly disappointed. But I am thankful because I've pushed up the price to $649 because the price was already too low. It was already too low.
Sorry for cutting in, but you talked about the people that were there. Last time there's been multiple businesses started from the people that were at the conference too.
That's right.
Multiple businesses.
And Bridget reminds that there have been multiple businesses started from people who attended that conference. You did.
Never knew each other.
People have never met each other, and now they're doing businesses together. And I also want to remind you of this. My consultation for an hour, what's that price?
I think it's $679.
Yeah, so the conference, the consultation for 1 hour of my time in a consultation is like $680, something like that, right? So to come out and meet me in person and be among these people for more than one day, this is a very low cost. I truly don't like broke people, and I don't like irresponsible men. I don't like people who think that they should have things they don't deserve. We're in an era where everyone wants to live like a millionaire, even though they don't have a millionaire mindset. They don't have a millionaire personality. They don't have millionaire intellect. They don't have millionaire work ethic. They're watching social media and they're seeing what guys like me are living like, not realizing that, bruh, I went to world-class universities and I thrived at world-class universities. I speak multiple languages. I have a gifted and talented IQ as identified in the 4th grade. Like, I'm not an average guy. So if you don't have what I have, don't get angry at that. Just exist at your stage of life and be happy. We're in an era where people are unhappy because they're looking at their neighbors when really you need to look at what you got and what you got going on. Like when I see a guy with a woman who's more beautiful than my woman or more curvy than my woman, I don't get jealous that I don't have that woman. I salute him and say, hey, bro, you doing something right. I'm happy for you. So I just wanted to take out that little bit of time. And I just want to let you know, if you are on here right now and you feel any level of jealousy toward me, toward one of your fellow saints, toward anybody, any stranger you see out in the public, you're not of us. You are not saintly. You are not soaking up the ism. We don't want you. We don't need a big movement. We don't want a big movement. This is the leadership class. And that broke individual, I don't know where they're at right now, but please let them never come back to our doorstep. You dig? I rebuke you. That was disgusting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Broke motherfucker. And by the way, broke people are fucking dangerous. This is why I stay away from broke people. Broke people will sit and watch you operate with jealousy. And their jealousy will turn them more and more evil until they act out and do something vicious toward you. And this is why the Bible has many stories of guidance. There's a story of Cain and Abel. 2 brothers. One brother betrayed the other brother. These human frailty, our weaker base emotions. It's really sad.
It was also sad is you're sitting here giving them free advice while
Right.
you have your room service steak at a 5-star hotel getting cold. I
Right.
don't know if they know what a cost of a steak at a 5-star hotel is on room service, but
Thank you. And yeah, let me point that out too. Bridget just pointed out, she says, I'm out here giving free advice to people when my steak at a 5-star hotel is getting cold. And if you ever ordered room service, room service is expensive. You can imagine getting a steak at 3 a.m. at a 5-star hotel is very expensive. Now, just for the record, for people who think I'm like raking in money, the super chats that we've gotten on this session added together do not add up to my steak. And I'm letting my steak get cold just so I can fellowship and kick game with you guys. So it's like, how do you not have respect for someone like that? Like, how do you not show honor? And that's the sad thing, is that there's so many men who lack honor. And if it was up to me, I would spill your blood upon the soil. I really would. I would return you to the earth. You dig? Because you're not worth walking above the earth. You should be a part of the earth so that you can be stepped on by great men like me. I really feel that way. I really want you guys to know, for the dirtbags out there. No decency out here. Boy. I'm talking reckless today. Bridget, you turning me up.
you're a bigger person because if I were you, I'd just end it and eat my steak after people are complaining.
Right? See, the thing that I don't want to do, when I was a teacher, I taught 30 kids at a time, right? There was always 2 kids that were weirdos. And I realized if I focus on those 2 kids who are weirdos, it's at the expense of the 28 kids who are there studious, who want to learn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it takes away from them.
It takes away from them. Neymar writes, peace of saints. I noticed that the majority of people have the victim mindset and blame others for their problems. Had to cut off losers and change my mindset. Oh, I agree. And that's what we've seen. It was a person who had a victim mentality, a broke motherfucker who isn't even of us. Someone writes, that's not expensive. That's cheap. Yeah, I know. And that's the sad thing, is that people who are locked into a poverty mindset, they don't even know what real things cost. You've probably never even been to a conference. Divine writes, make it a grand. The lady writes, $5.99. Oh, if you can't invest $5.99 in yourself, you aren't worth anything.
But it's $6.50 now. Remember that.
Right, $6.49 now. Right. Yeah. I agree. And that's the man, it's sad. Person don't. Ooh, my goodness, it's sad. May the Lord protect me from people who are broke and ugly. He didn't have a photo either. I'm gonna go ahead and assume he was ugly. Mr. Rodriguez writes, peace of the saints. Just paying tuition and appreciating the wisdom being given. I appreciate you. Much love to you all. And may we all grow into something great within this wonderful community. That's a lovely message. Did you finish your food?
I'm still working on it.
Okay. Killa writes, I recently found you after becoming alpha after following the rules of the four horsemen, in which your words of wisdom bless me. Have you ever been afraid of our greatest money-making ideas? Have you ever been afraid have you ever been afraid of your greatest money-making ideas? No. And you know what? I always say go forward like a fearless lunatic. Give it a try. The world is really separated between those who try and those who don't try, those who are honest and those who lie, those who have a poverty mindset and those who have an abundance mindset, those who have a fixed mindset, not changing, and those who have a growth mindset, adapting to thrive. Mr. Bettis writes, peace to the saints. How can one get a product-based business going without having a large following on social media? Great question. When you create a unique product or a very quality product, the product itself can be positioned to sell based on those two factors. So for example, when I'm out in the world with my backpack briefcase, people compliment it all the time. Every compliment is a potential sale. So say if I had 10 of those in my trunk, I go out in the world and someone's like, oh man, that's really nice. Where'd you get that? Oh, I produced this. It's this amount of money. I actually have a couple in my trunk if you'd like one. When something is unique, people go to you for it because you're the only one who has it. That is the key, is product differentiation. Julian comes through via PayPal. He writes, hey, Marquette, very thankful for what you do. I appreciate that, Julian. I'm 22 years old. I met a girl last weekend. Beautiful thing. I like her, but not as much as she seems to like me. That's a good thing. It seems to me that she would like to turn what we have into something serious. Most of them do. But I don't feel like being tied to one girl. It gets like that, especially when you're 21 or 22. How do you manage a situation where you would like to have someone in your life, but accepting the conditions, it might hurt them? Well, it's a good question, Saint. Number one, you have to ask yourself, what are the possible negative outcomes and what are the possible good outcomes? So you really have two choices. You can be straightforward with her and let her know she's not going to get what she wants from you. Well, what are the negative outcomes of that? Well, she leaves. That's the worst outcome. Or she stays and she is engaging with other men, which opens you up to unfortunate things. Those are the two bad outcomes if you tell her the truth. If you tell her the truth, if you deceive her and put her under the assumption that she's getting what she wants from you, which might be monogamy or the potential for exclusivity, then she's probably going to behave better. She's probably going to be more likely to be monogamous, and she's more likely to be honest and trustworthy. So, and you have to also be aware that eventually she may uncover what you're actually doing. So you have to ask yourself, well, what is this worth to you? And then make the tough decisions based on that. What you'll come to understand is that men of great power often have to make tough decisions. And the good thing is that as you become more powerful, your decisions in some ways become more easy. For a woman who would have not allowed you to have multiple women now might allow you to have multiple women because she perceives you to be of higher value. So, Saint, you have to understand that life does have challenging situations. And, I've mentioned this many times, that I had a friend in college who's now a professor of psychology. And he would always say, Marquette, you have to lie to the women. That'll get you the best outcomes. And I would always say, nah, go for the honesty. And after 10 years of data and experience, I would say he was right, that they would much rather live under illusion, generally speaking. Le Jimmy back. Le Jimmy writes, relating back to a previous live, in my experience, it seems like my girlfriend's best friends have disliked me out of jealousy due to themselves not being able to find a good man. Tell me about it. Thoughts? Well, number one, if you are the good man of your girlfriend and her friends don't have a good man, that's a poor reflection on her. For birds of a feather flock together. So if she somehow found a good man and they can't find a good man, you might be with a woman who's not a good woman. That's one thing to be aware of. Number two, if someone doesn't like you, you ought not waste any effort trying to get them to change their mind, for that is a very difficult task. And it's not a good investment of your energy and emotion. So I'd say generally just leave that as is and continuing doing what you do, which is to live a high quality life. And if that girl is a high quality girl, then she will draw in closer to you, realizing that at the end of the night, she goes to bed with you. She doesn't go to bed with her friends, nor even her parents. You are her family of choice. And if she's wise, she understands that you would be her best bet in the long term. Yuma writes, hope you're enjoying your time in Kenya. I am. And it only gets better from here. We got some great plans for tomorrow. I'm very excited, extremely excited. And I love getting excited. All right. Okay, so anyways, I was telling you guys previously, long story short, I met this one female and I'd categorized her as a side girl. And every time I'd invite her out, she wouldn't accept the invitation every time. Or I would invite her out to do one thing, which was generally like come get smashed or come to the environment so that you can come get smashed. And then she would try to like say, oh, let's go get some food. Now, I don't know if she was one of those hungry girls who want to eat for free or whatever the case was. But being that she was a side girl to me, when she did not get with the program, I eventually just cut her off. Now, she didn't take this very well, but I did it fairly quickly. And the reason I did is one, because I have abundance, meaning a lot of options. I don't need to deal with you if you're going to cause challenges. And I'm not even very interested in you because you're a side girl. So like, meaning you're easily replaceable with any random woman walking the street. So I don't need to like act like you're the last woman on earth. So I kicked her to the curb. And I did that quickly. And I want you to know that I was able to do that because I do have abundance and because I am constantly recruiting. So that puts you in a very strong position. Whereas many of you guys will ask me like, oh, the girl did this. What should I do? I'm like, whoa, what she did was a serious violation of Law 304. She needs to be kicked out of the picture. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any loyalty to your women. You should if she's a main girl and if she has good qualities. But if you don't know her that well, you don't have that much time invested, you're not linked to her in any major financial ways or otherwise, get rid of her and get someone better. Anytime you're holding on to something for dear life, it's because you don't have abundance. Losing $1 million is a terrible thing, especially if you only have $1 million to lose. If you have $1 million and you lose $1 million, oh, that's terrible. But if you lose $1 million and you got another 18 million in the bank, it is what it is. Let's carry on. So you should always have something in your back pocket. And I just wanted to share that last piece with you because some of you guys hold on to the girl so tightly, it puts her under the illusion that you need her. And that is the worst thing to empower a certain kind of mind with. You dig what I'm saying? Shout out to Castro. He writes, greetings, Saints. Any advice on traveling for first timers? Yes, I do. Number one, plan out as many things as you can. Memorize the exchange rate. Memorize a couple basic phrases in the native language you'll be in, meaning yes, no, meaning smaller, bigger, like more or less. Now, these are common phrases that you can use. Even if you're using it improperly, people will understand what you mean. Thank you. Bathroom. Get your basic phrases together. Know the exchange rate so you don't get cheated. Map out where you're going to stay hotel-wise. And make sure that you stick to things that are appropriate for you, which is to say that you don't really want to go to Brazil and start touring the favelas unless you know someone personally. The Master Sun Tzu records that you should avail yourself to local guides, which is to say anywhere you go, find someone who knows the lay of the land, and that should be the person taking you around. I thank you for that question, Saint. I also do have a packing list that I may share with the Saints soon. It's almost mastered. And as you know, I travel a lot. And not only have I traveled extensively, I've traveled over all of the continents. And I think I have the master packing list. I would consider sharing that list. Yeah. So if you're a member, send me a message. I might go ahead and post that up for you guys. Anyways, it's been truly a pleasure to be here fellowshipping with you. I got a cold steak. I got to eat. Let us end this the way we always end this. with the creed of the assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you. The creed of the assassin. I am going to be who I truly am because I am remarkable, and I am going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Until next time.